agricultural value chain, with issues concerning access to market, what to do with the excess produce and all. And those situations were made worse by the COVID-19 situation. I'd like to start with asking Daniel. Daniel, technology in agric and agric as a business are concepts that have become famous in the last 10 years. How much progress have we made as Africa, and what are the successes?
Yeah, good morning, Phil, and then my fellow panelists. So it's been very exciting to be here on this platform again. As she said, I've been a regular member of this platform. I mean, back to your question. I mean, when you talk about technology and agriculture, Africa as a whole has made a quite tremendous progress in this area. I mean, if you look at history and you look at the first three industrial revolutions, Africans largely lag behind. And the part of the challenge that we have today is because you fail to take advantage of those industrial that happen in Africa. By the fourth industrial revolution has ushered in several entrepreneurs across Africa that are developing technology support agriculture programs across everywhere in Africa, in the continent. You go to West Africa, Southern Africa, East Africa, Africa, everywhere you go, young people, for that matter, young African entrepreneurs are taking advantage of using technology to be able to develop agriculture. So there are now technologies for soil testing. People are using artificial intelligence, robotics. People are using digitization tools, online platforms, e-commerce platforms to sell food, to trade food. And I know in Nigeria, there are several companies in Nigeria that are using e-commerce to actually sell retail food products that are collected from farms. And so quite a number of progress have been made. You still have a long way to go. But then I think that we've made quite tremendous progress. I mean, you at Esoko have been at the forefront of developing technologies for agricultural development. Across a number of countries, we've been using technologies like mobile, web, and as a tool to allow farmers to digitize their supply chains, improve information flow within the agricultural value chain, support farmers to have access to market, access to credit, access to insurance, and then also even access to tangible market outlets that hitherto were not there for the farmer to take advantage of. And so now, a farmer could sit back at his farm village, make a request about the price of a commodity anywhere in the continent, and be able to get a price and be able to discover a new market and sell products to this market. I mean, that's just not all. I mean, like I said, there are several now new technologies that people are developing, even for invoicing agriculture trade. And so people are now able to develop that allow agriculture traders, middlemen, off-takers, aggregators to be able to discount their invoices and get quick credit to be able to buy produce from farmers. And so there's been enough progress has been made. I think as the conversation goes on, you're going to talk more about some of these specifics that I'll be talking about. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Michael. Daniel. Michael, I'm coming to you now. I want us to really look at food security. Can Africa achieve food security? And what are the things that need to happen for us to achieve that?
Thank you very much. And once again, thank you for having me on this panel. I'm incredibly honored to be around right now. So now to pretty much just answer your question around, if Africa can, get to a level of good food security, I think that it's entirely possible for us to get to that level. The African continent alone can fit the United States of America, China, and a whole lot of other countries in the same continent that we are all in right now. So, as big as China is, as big as they are the largest producer of rice in the world, United States is there, and they produce massively in the cereal industry. And to think that those two massive countries fit comfortably within the continent of Africa, it means that the potential is there. It means that we can eventually get there. So now the question is, what are the things we're doing now? And what are the investments we're making in the agricultural sector that will boost every single thing that farmers are doing now and in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years, in the next 15 years to get to the point where we can attain food security. There are more than 1 billion people in Africa right now, and that is estimated to grow rapidly over the next 5 to 10 years. And it's important that we should be able to even feed Africans. And the goal is eventually for Africa to feed the world. And if the goal of Africa is to feed the world, then achieving food security for Africans at first is a major goal and a major milestone that we need to hit really, really fast. Thanks.
Thank you very much. You say Africa can feed the world. The key word here that I get is can. Can. That's a possible, probability. So what really do we need to do to feed the world? What do we need to do to translate this from a potential into reality? I'd like Chime to give his insight into that. What we need to do to go from the place of potential to the place of reality.
Okay, absolutely. So, once again, thanks for the opportunity to be here on this platform. In terms of what I think Africa needs to do to actually achieve the reality of food security, I think it really does start from beginning to leverage the existing technologies and future technologies that are being developed within the agricultural sector in a really tangible way. One of the challenges that we've had within, I think, the African agricultural sector in general is a kind of fragility to certain types of shocks outside of the system. So whether that is via droughts or different types of climate shocks and even environmental challenges that we've had that have reduced the productivity of the African agricultural sector over the years. I think now, however, with the development of various technologies, smart technologies, and different kinds of machine learning, artificial intelligence, different tools, we're able to kind of build up what we call anti-fragility within the system, such that it's more predictable. We're able to have farmers leverage these technologies to be able to anticipate some of these shocks a little bit better, and then ultimately improve their productivity along the way. So I think having active investment into those technologies, creating an enabling environment for the various entrepreneurs who are engaged in these technological systems to be able to build and thrive within the African continent. I think leaning into that kind of disposition is going to really help Africa as a whole get to that level of food security that we need.
Oh, thank you very much. You talked about environmental influence. There's certain things that we totally do not have entire control over, like the COVID-19 that came and brought about such major changes. I'd like to direct this question at Segun, who is here with me in the studio. COVID-19 and other future pandemics will definitely continue to impact the agricultural value chain. What technologies can make a difference?
Okay, thank you very much. I think the technologies that can actually make a difference right now, it's precision agriculture technologies. When I mean precision agricultural technologies, like that of remote sensing, things like IoT sensors and co, because these technologies actually, you can be able to use them most of the time remotely, especially the remote sensing technology, which involves satellites and drones. And as it relates to issues of food security, yield productivity, it's very important. And with precision agriculture, you're able to actually measure things like soil nutrients. You're able to also look at things like water stress and things like crop health. So with those remote sensing technologies and IoTs and drones that are available, this will actually help in things of yield productivity as regards the issue of the COVID-19. Looking at that, but the question will be, these technologies already exist. And in terms of adoption, parts of Africa, you discover that adoption is actually higher than that of East Africa, places like Kenya, places like Ethiopia and Uganda. But coming down to the West, especially in Nigeria here, the problem remains the level of literacy and the cost of this technology. I use an example because I do a lot of field work, so I can be able to relate to all this. Especially in northern Nigeria, you have a whole lot of farmers. And for our own company, we're using remote sensing technology and satellite data to monitor things that go on the farm. Like I mentioned, issues of crop health and soil nutrients and everything. But the question will be every time, at every point in time, we need to continue training agents on the field on how to use these technologies and also inform the farmers. Sometimes issues of language and all is also a problem. So as I mentioned, these technologies exist, but the question will be the level of adoption is still very low.
The level of adoption is still very low, even though the technologies are available. So let's say I am a farmer in a remote village somewhere in the Niger Delta. How do I get access to this technology? What are the things that I need to do? I need Daniel to answer this question. How do farmers in remote areas who have no access, how can they be exposed to the technologies that we're talking about?
Okay, I think most of the time when we say technology, we kind of tend to think that the farmers themselves are supposed to directly be engaging and interacting with the technology. From what you've learned over the years, that is really not entirely the case. We really want to see a situation where farmers are being supported either by field agents or by any intermediary to be able to use the technology to improve on what they are doing. I mean, when COVID-19 struck back in March and April, what you saw is that there's a lot of growth that happened within most of the farming communities. At the same time, food products prices in major cities across Africa began to rise. The reason that farmers were not able to transport their food from these rural areas to the big cities. And this is largely because there was a lot of disruption in movement and transportation, supply chain disruptions that caused this to happen. What we believe can actually help is to be able to identify, to have a system where you have a kind of a local kind of banks, food banks, where the smallholder farmer has been transformed in a way that they are producing into that kind of food bank concept. And so in that way, yes, you can still use your drones, you can still use your AI, you can still use your remote sensing. But then the farmers themselves are not necessarily the one who are using remote sensing tool or necessarily using the, say, drone to be able to do this kind of service. There's a company that has just set up in Ghana that are using drone to support smallholder farmers. So most smallholder farmers now have access to drone to spray their farms, to apply foliar fertilizers, and even to control armyworms, for instance. But they're not the one doing it. And so, by the way, these farmers are still take advantage of this technology to improve on their productivity. And so, I think that the ecosystem, the whole value chain concept, need to be strengthened and developed. So, the smallholder farmer doesn't necessarily need to hold a much sophisticated drone to map or to spray their own field, but there are intermediaries within the value chain that is out there providing the service to these people. What's really interesting with this drone service, for instance, is that these farmers, they're actually charging the farmers the same rate that the normal manual labor could charge. So when they come to an area and then the manual labor is costing $40 to spray a hectare of farm, that's how much they charge. So in a way, every farmer is able to transition from the manual process of spraying their farm to now using drone to be able to spray the farm. But that farmer himself is not the one doing that. So you have people in the value chain that have developed capacity, that have developed the tools and resources that are making them available to the farmer to be able to take advantage of them. So that's how I see some of these things. I mean, we're talking about even using robotics to be able to plant crops and all of that. We are talking about upscaling, training these farmers to be able to get to a level where they cannot begin to interact with the technology. That is there. We are not there yet. So for now, I think what you need to focus on is how do you support intermediaries within the value chain with the right technology, with the right resources to be able to provide the services to the smallholder farmers. That can be very much enhanced when these people are actually much more concentrated in an area. As we're talking about using block farm, we're talking about a group of smallholder farmers into having a block farm. In that way, when we are even applying the technology, we are using remote sensing or drone, whatever that may be, you go to an area, have 100 hectares of land, you actually apply technology as against 1 hectare or 1 acre of land to apply. So that's how I think I see it, that this intermediate need to support the people need to come into the value chain, new technologies, new ideas to help the smallholder farmers to use the services. If you look at the people what we have been doing over the years, we are providing services to farmers, but the farmers themselves are not necessarily using smartphones. They are using ordinary feature for which in Ghana you call the YAM phone. But then they are still able to access the technology that you want them to have. And so technology providers need to be able to develop a system that is very much user-friendly, that allows every smallholder farmer to be able to use the service without necessarily that farmer being very, very sophisticated in their way of how to use technology or adopting technology. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for that insight, Daniel. The keyword I see that I picked up productivity. Farming is not just farming for its sake. It's a business, the business of agribusiness. And so it is important that we have productivity for the farmers to keep producing. Okay, so because if for any reason they are not able to get their products to the end user or to some food bank, like you mentioned, chances are that the business will not thrive. So what do we do to enhance the agri-business value chain in Africa? Chime,
So
what do we
I think that in enhancing the value chain, it's about in one way, it's about applying the technologies in the right areas, and then being able to really reap the value of the technologies. So in my work, so I build models, and I build models for different types of agricultural organizations, predictive models to help predict whether that be environmental factors or even product pricing and things like that. In the African context, I think it's important to be able to leverage these technologies in a way that will help farmers anticipate the things that may hinder productivity. So, for instance, climate shocks are a big challenge within the African context, right? And so, one of the challenges, whether it be droughts or any other kinds of unintentional or unexpected climate problems, that those typically have a pretty significant negative impact on productivity. I think when you have these organizations and companies that are able to help apply technologies, predictive technologies, to help farmers anticipate some of these shocks, then the farmers are able to plan ahead of time and then also then manage and mitigate those shocks as they come along. So applying the technologies, especially predictive technologies, which is an area that I focused on, I think will really help in terms of being able to sustain productivity even during those periods of time when there may be some kind of extraneous variable that will cause the lowering in productivity for the farmers.
Thank you very much. Segun, you're here. You, in your experience, you are the head of a company that helps develop end-to-end solutions for farmers, corporates, and industries. Do you want to share your experience with us?
Okay. I've been on this journey now. It's about 2 years, and it's been quite an interesting journey because our core focus are smallholder farmers. Because smallholder farmers actually make up the largest amount of farmers in Africa. And in terms of hectares also of land, they also have the highest. So we need to actually focus on them. But from my experience, like I mentioned, the level of literacy is actually very low because looking at northern Nigeria, for example, I have a whole lot of farmers and co. And apart from the level of literacy you have, these farmers actually scattered across different areas, not actually aggregated, also working on their own communally and co. So these are the kind of problems that we actually face. And when you even give them information, because our own core area is actually advising on good agricultural practices, on issues on the farm, and actually having them to apply those informations. And when you supply them those informations, the question will always be that where is the financing actually to be able to buy the needed inputs to be able to apply that information? For example, you use remote sensing on the farm and tell the farmer, hey, this particular side of the farm needs you to apply this particular amount of fertilizer so that you don't over-apply this particular input. And you hear the farmer ask you a question. We don't have the money to be able to get these inputs. So that's a part of the value chain that needs to actually be sorted out in terms of input financing. And aside from that, has been mentioned, logistics to the consumer. So these are the gaps that we actually experience. But from experience, what has happened is we work with agents of farm organizations to be able to continually inform these farmers about the need for the adoption of these good agricultural practices so that their yield can actually be increased.
Thank you very much. You raised a very important point of funding. Funding is a major issue in agribusiness. Michael Ogundare, I'd like you to share your thoughts and your experience in regarding funding for agribusinesses.
Thank you very much. I think to a very large extent, there is almost nothing that can be done in agriculture. Whatever innovation that we bring into agriculture, if there is no financing for it, then all of it is DOA, dead on arrival. If we say that we want to, bring in satellite technology, remote sensing, good agricultural practices, so many things that can improve agriculture itself. The genesis or the foundation to it all is financing all of these good things. So also crop to cash, one of the things that we focus on is making formal financing accessible to farmers. And that's because we know that in Africa, there's a $170 billion funding gap in agriculture. I mean, that's if all that money is available, if there's a way for us to, close that gap, agriculture itself would, improve massively. So now the question is, where is this money? Who are the people that have this money? Who are the people that can invest or finance agriculture? There are solutions, there are alternative financing solutions like crowdfunding platforms. There are development organizations that finance farmers. And for me personally, I believe that there are billions and billions of naira that you can use to finance agriculture. That is with commercial banks right now. I mean, commercial banks are in the business of lending. They're in the business of actually doing business with money. But the challenge has now been, how can financial institutions lend to farmers? How can they lend to a farmer that is in a rural community where there is almost no network connection in their village or in their community? So that's really the main question. How can we connect these smallholder farmers to financing from banks that are in headquarters that is in Lagos State or something like that? So it's a pretty major challenge. And so, for example, one of the many ways that we're solving that right now is ensuring that there is a way for the financial institutions to have some visibility into the operations of the farmers. So the major challenge with people that finance agriculture is that once the money reaches the farmer, that's all they know, that's all they can see until they get paid back. They don't know what the farmers are actually doing with it. There's no way for them to preempt any issues around risk, and there's no way for them to quickly mitigate the risks that are coming up as they are producing. So, but if the right solutions the farmer needs to produce, which includes good agricultural practices and advisory services from Segun's company, predictive models from Chime's company, and other digital technology solutions from Daniel's company. Putting all of this together will pretty much just make it easier for farmers to succeed. The question now is, if all of this can come together, can banks and other financial institutions and other major stakeholders finance using these tools and using these techniques, so that they will be very sure and they will be the risks along the value chain they are lending will be mitigated, because you know that if they are lending to a farmer that is getting good agronomic advice from Segun's company, and that same farmer is also going to get the right sort of advice around when there's going to be a drought in the next 2 months or so from Chime's company. At the end of it, or connecting farmers' harvest to profitable markets. All these things need to be in place, and all of these things need to be a significant place in the value chain, and all connect.
Have we lost Michael? Okay, Daniel, I'd like you to share your insights into government's involvement in the agribusiness.
Yes, right. So, I mean, governments all over Africa have always been talking about the fact that agriculture is a mainstay of the economies. This has become more or less like a slogan in many African countries. I mean, in actual sense, the level of involvement in many African countries is quite low. However, there's been a change in that. So, like those of us in Ghana have seen quite tremendous progress of the government being supporting agribusiness in Ghana to thrive. And so, for the past 4 or so years, they've been after 8 or so years, they've been a subsidy program where smallholder farmers are subsidized to buy fertilizers at a very cheap cost. They're able to get inputs at a very cheap cost. But what I've seen largely is that agriculture, particularly for Ghana, when they talk about agriculture modernization, has largely been, say, tractors, for instance. So how do you make tractors available for smallholder farmers to be able to plow their land? But in agriculture modernization, far more than just tractors. It's actually include how do you actually really introduce several technologies, including robotics, including AI, including blockchain, including big data, including whatever you're talking about here, sensing, drones, everything to the agriculture. So that's an area where I see there's a very little progress that been made in quite a lot of countries in Africa. So we haven't seen quite a lot of government involvement in supporting entrepreneurs who are developing or bringing these new technologies into their countries. And that's one that I think that governments, if anybody is even listening to us in this forum, should pay attention to. How do you support the many entrepreneurs that are coming out with new technologies to support agriculture development in Africa? I mean, the issue has been not only should be fertilizers or subsidies, but it should be much more broad in scope. It should be much more encompassing, including everything that actually promotes take agriculture development from end to end. That's I think that one that you need to see. You want to see a situation where every African country is able to indicate the entire supply chain, entire agriculture value chain, create a national database of farmers. If you go to an African country, you ask them, how many smallholder farmers do you have, for instance, they'll be able to start scratching their head. Everybody knows that. Right, so how do you create a national database of smallholder farmers in Africa that can actually use that data to provide services to these people? That has actually been absent in many countries that I have been working in Africa. And so those are things that I think the government needs to be much more supportive in this area. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Government needs to be much more supportive of agribusiness. We have Michael back. Michael, do you want to finish your thoughts?
As I was saying, so I mean, everything pretty much just ends up being around how can financial institutions are considering risks with agriculture, but smart technology and digital technology, all of these things are mitigating risks that financial institutions consider. And it's now a matter of how can we start bundling all these technology tools and solutions together, making that part of the financing that financiers and financial institutions you put together whenever they want to finance farmers. So it's important to think in the bundle mindset. Intermediaries working with farmers that want to give them the access to drone technology. It will be much easier if the service is bundled with the financing itself, and rather than going directly to it with the farmers, because can the farmers afford this fancy technology? It's pretty hard. It's pretty hard to tell someone that is living on $25 a day to pay for drone tech, to pay for satellite tech, when for the past 20 years they've been putting the seed in the ground and it's been germinating, but of course they don't know that their productivity has not been optimal. But to get that productivity to be optimal, these things are needed. But approaching the farm.
Oh, are we losing Michael again? Michael, seems like your mic is muted. Oh, okay. Michael is off again. All right. So organizing farmers. He said something about one who's living on $2 a day is not going to be thinking about drone technology and all of that. So I'm thinking organizing farmers into cooperatives. Chime, what are your thoughts? Putting them together so they can come to the place of benefiting from the financing or organize themselves in a manner that makes it valuable for them to access the finance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think definitely that cooperative farming will be a big key in trying to implement some of these technologies within the African context. Unlike in North America and different parts of the Western world where there has been a long history of kind of industrialized use of big technologies, within Africa, smallholder farmers are the vast majority of the farmers. In order to be able to leverage these technologies, organizing farmers in cooperatives where they can kind of aggregate their produce as well as aggregate their knowledge will be very key. One of the things within the company that I work with within the Nigerian context, AgroDomain, that we're trying to provide is an online kind of cooperative system, a cooperative management system that will enable both existing cooperatives and even the creation of new cooperatives in a way that is kind of digitally streamlined, which will hopefully help create a wider range of accessibility to some of these cooperative organizations, and will enable farmers all across the country and hopefully the continent geographically to be able to join and then come to one kind of direct portal where they can access these technologies, whether that be analytical insights, whether that be financing, whether that be ability to access rental for equipment. But so this, I think, having that organization, but creating an easy platform that will enable them to engage in that organization will be very important. So yes, I do think it's very key, especially within the African context.
Oh, okay, thank you very much, Chime. I'd like you, Daniel, to tell us what your experience is working with smallholder farmers and organizing them to benefit from what Esoko has been doing in Ghana.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, like my colleague was just saying, I mean, organizing smallholder farmers is fundamental to anything that you want to do as far as development agriculture is concerned. I was talking about earlier on about the fact that you need to transform smallholder agriculture. You cannot transform smallholder agriculture without having them organized and to a group. And so, for instance, if the farmers are dispersed and each of them is operating as a silo, then people take advantage of them. If a middleman goes in there, he wants to offer them different price because they are not united. And so, first of all, the smallholder family needs to understand the value in coming together and working as a cooperative. But that has largely been challenging, largely because there's a lot of issue of trust among Africans where you don't really trust each other to work with. So they form a cooperative today, tomorrow the group is disintegrated. But I think that smallholder agriculture can only be transformed when farmers are really coming together. I believe that the way where farmers are doing 1 acre here, 2 acre there will not lead us anywhere. But being able to get them together and having a block farm concept where we have 200 farmers working on 100-hectare land, that's the only way we can apply technologies like drone, like remote sensing, like AI, like artificial intelligence, and all of that. If they are working at 1 acre here, that kind of thing, there's no way those farmers can actually support it. What you've seen in Africa, and particularly in Ghana where you've been operating, is that most of the farmers who are to cooperate are able to come together, able to access information. For instance, you give them a price information about the price of, say, maize in this market. Sometimes, if they are working as a cooperative, they're able to organize a simple track and transport their produce from point A to point where they get a much higher price for their product. If they were operating alone as individual farmers, there was no way they were going to be able to even hire a truck to go to that nearby market and sell their crops. And so it's very, very fundamental. If you want to offer credit to the farmers, there's no way anybody want to offer credit to individual farmers one here and there. But the ones they are grouped, they are organized, you have cooperative, there's a structure in place, then even giving them credit becomes very, very easier. I always say that there are two fundamental problems that affect agriculture in Africa, and these are credit and market, and the two are somehow interlinked. Right, and so credit goes with market. If any person who wants to lend to a farmer knows that this farmer has already market, has a guaranteed market, has a guaranteed price, then some of the risks actually kind of reduce. But you cannot do all of this when the farmers are really organized. And so what I would probably say to end this conversation is that if you really want to be able to improve and increase their productivity, those of us operating along the value chain who are operating, providing services, need to ensure that these farmers are organized. They are really coming together and forming a cooperative and very well structured. So you can actually trickle down an intervention down from the top to the down. You can't do this alone. You can not do it by one farmer to the other. You actually have to do it as a group. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Daniel. I think we have Michael back. Michael, we must get it right this time. So go on.
Thank you. So, so I mean, I think to a large extent, really just to round up what I was saying is that whatever solution that we industry players are developing, especially around digital technology, I think the target, especially for to make sure that it's sustainable, should be the people that can finance this solution. And you can't, like I said again, you can't go to the farmer to say, pay me to provide satellite imagery of your farm to you when the farmer doesn't have a tablet or something, or there is, bad connectivity in their community. But of course, all of these things is possible with technology. So it's now a matter of, can that be bundled into the financing that farmers receive? Can that be bundled along with, we talk about input financing. Can we start talking about the impact of digital tools in agriculture and financing that at the same time? Because if we don't talk about it, farmers' productivity won't really change. Their productivity won't really change. They will keep, give them input financing and they receive the same input that they've been receiving for the past 10 years. They will produce the same way they've been producing for the past 10 years. But if you put in digital tools and smart agricultural tools into it, and you finance it, then you stand to, make the farmers' harvest increase in multiple folds. And at the end of it all, it's pretty much just putting more money in the pockets of farmers, and that's really where we want to get to. If more money can, get in the pockets of farmers, that means they can produce more, and we can really get to the point of food security.
I like that you say we're taking us to the point of food security. I want to have Chime share his thoughts. Food security for Africa. When do you think we can achieve it?
Yeah.
Obviously.
In terms of timelines, that's one would have to be a prophet to really be able to say exactly when. But I do think that taking these kind of steps that we've all discussed here, we're on the right track in that sense. I think that there exists a unique opportunity with the development of some of these technologies for Africa to not follow the same pathway that even the Western world has followed when it comes to the growth of their agricultural capacity. And what that is to say is that I think there's an opportunity for Africa to kind of have a leapfrog effect where, as opposed to going through the pathways of kind of heavy mechanization, which we've seen in the West, before then transitioning into the more recent kind of digitization of agricultural technology, I think that due to our demographics, where there's a significant portion of the population that's being young, and the fact that we've not made as much institutional investment into some of these more traditional mechanized ways of farming, I think that there is an opportunity to immediately leapfrog and get to these to high levels of proficiency with the newer smart technologies. I think, though, that in order to do that, there has to be both buy-in at the local kind of farmer level, but more specifically and more importantly, buy-in at the institutional level. And that is really when we're talking about at the political and governmental level, in order to support the adoption of these technologies. I think when we look at the ecosystem, some of the challenges I've even experienced working within the agricultural system in the West is there's even a friction when it comes to adopting these type of technologies, just because farmers are so used to having operated a certain way. And so because that way has been working, trying to get them to move to these new systems, these new forms of agriculture, is somewhat difficult. And then in response, governments have various programs that are meant to help ease the transition for farmers. That's even in the Western society where you see still high levels of productivity. The government still steps in to help ease that transition. I think within the African context, that governmental role will be even more important in order to take advantage of the opportunity to get to that leapfrogging effect. I mean, I think one can't put a date on it, obviously, but I do think that the opportunity is there as a result of the technologies that are already available and that are being led by various African entrepreneurs. You know, this is not an area where we can say that Africa has to lag behind. I think some of the most interesting technological advancements are coming out of African entrepreneurs, are coming out of people on the continent. And so I think really trying to leverage that human capital that is in the continent right now is going to be really important in achieving that food security.
Thank you very much, Chime. We are in the last 5 minutes or so. So I'd like to have Michael just share your quick final thoughts.
So yeah, thank you very much. So I mean, it's been an interesting conversation so far with everybody else on this panel, and I think that to a very large extent, as Chime just mentioned right now, the opportunity and the chances for all of us in Africa to leapfrog, the challenges that others have faced in the past. The opportunities are immense. There are a lot of smart and incredible young people working on these problems along the entire value chain, and I can't put a date to when we can, attain food security at U2, but I believe that we can do it at a much shorter time than other economies in the world have done it. And I think that if we can get there like as quickly as possible, that could really, make Africa a major powerhouse, major economy in the world.
Thank you, Michael. Daniel, your final thoughts?
I think you've made quite a number of progress in Africa as far as the government is concerned. I mean, you got everything now. You got a youth population. I mean, most more than 60% of our population are actually young people. 60% of the Western cultivated land is said to be in Africa. And so we have everything that it takes to be the next food basket for the rest of the world. I think what you need to do is to get it right, to get the fundamentals right, get a smaller farmer population transformed in a way that they can be more productive, and in a way that they can be more efficient, in a way that they can be actually be integrated to the farmer economy. I mean, many smaller farmers in Africa are not currently integrated to the farmer economy, so you cannot even tax them. You cannot even sell the consumer good to them. But once they are digitized, they have been included into the digital ecosystem, then all other services can be provided to these people. That's the only way you can actually live from the rest of the world and becoming the next food frontier for the global population. So we are making good progress, but you still need to run a bit faster to be able to get where you want to be.
Thank you very much. So we're making good progress, but there's a whole lot more to be done. Shegun, what are your final thoughts?
I would just say that there are a whole lot of government programs that are ongoing at the national, at the state level. I think the government needs to work with tech entrepreneurs to see how these particular programs can be scaled down up to the bottom in terms of financing, in terms of input supply, and good agricultural practices. So there needs to be a cooperation between the government and entrepreneurs. Adding to what Daniel was talking about issue of data, there is still a big problem of data around the country. For example, you want to be able to intervene in terms of fertilizer supplies. For example, the Anchor Borers program. You want to know the amount of farmers that are located in maybe in Kaduna State, for example. You don't have accurate data. So you cannot even be able to monitor issues. So you need a large data system to be able to verify what we call the ground truth, what's actually going on the field. So all these things are very key, because without data, there will be a gap even in intervention. So that's why I think there needs to be cooperation between the government and the private sector, and there needs to be a close gap in terms of data for accurate intervention.
Thank you very much, Shegun. Chime, you want to share your final thoughts?
Yeah, definitely. I think when it comes to data, that's an area where I primarily focus, and I think there really does have to be cooperation between the government and the tech world. I think kind of large-scale open data aggregation projects are really important, even in the application of some of these smart technologies. From a kind of technical perspective, technologies like machine learning technologies and any kind of predictive analytic technologies rely on data in order for them to be able to function effectively. And there's the strength of the model is only as good as the data that goes into it. And so I think that is really the foundation upon which a lot of these smart technologies will be able to live. And which is why I agree very much that cooperation and collaboration in order to fill these data gaps really needs to take place.
With that, we come to the end of the session. I'd like to heartily thank Daniel. Daniel, thank you very much for joining us all the way from Ghana. Thank you, Michael. It was a pleasure having you here. Sorry about the network glitch and all. Thank you, Chime, joining us from Canada. And in the studio here, Olusegun Adegun. Thank you very much. And you all have done a great job. See you again soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Have a good day too. So, yeah.